afternoon, everybody. This is the Monday wrap, and today we'll be looking at Genesis chapter 25, 25, 27, where we have an interesting, hold on one second here. This is in reference to Jacob and Esau, and it says, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man. I think the King James says a plain man. So then we wonder what is that really what it means, a quiet man and a plain man? But the truth is, it's actually the word means upright or a righteous man. And for example, it's used when God spoke about Job in Job 1 1, in Job 1 8, and Job 2 3. It's the word Tom, and so he was a upright or a righteous man. But we see right from the beginning there's a kind of a contradiction, it seems, because while Jacob was a Tom man, a righteous or upright man, but his name means like a cheater, a trickster. He's crooked. So it's like saying that the cheater was a righteous man. Well, what do you do with that? And the cheater was a Tom. He was a righteous man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we read about the most dysfunctional families in the Bible. Don't you love how the Bible just tells it like it is? It's not edited, redacted. There's no embellishing. It's just as it is because we are as we are. And it gives us encouragement to see that people as bad as us have gone before us, even people in the patriarchs and those who were prophets and apostles, all had their sins, their foibles, their issues, their problems. And so when Satan tries to work us over with discouragement, and sometimes even actually bringing evidence to the table, how that what he's saying is correct, it's really helpful to go to the scriptures and say, okay, I have the same disease as all these other men and women in the scriptures. It's called sin. And the wages of sin is death. And this is what we see has infected all of the human race without exception, other than the God-man, the Lamb of God, the son of Abraham, the son of David, the child born of... Except for him, we have all been infected by the same deadly disease. And we see this man Jacob, how creative he was. He was a great manipulator, and he was one who was skilled at getting his own way. As we read earlier, also his mother favored him over his brother Esau, but his dad favored Esau over him. And it says it clearly that Isaac loved his son Esau because he was a good hunter and apparently a good cook as well. And he benefited from that, I guess, more than he benefited from what Jacob could do. But Jacob was a blessing to his mother. So we see that this is the family This is the son of Abraham, the promised child, who was born when Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90. And finally, here he is. But we see that this promised child by no means was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But nevertheless, he was the promised child, through whom would come Jacob, through whom would come the 12 sons, the 12 tribes, through whom would come the tribe of Judah, through whom would eventually come King David in the line of kings, and then finally the birth of Christ from the tribe of Judah. And salvation would come, and all the nations of the earth would be blessed through Abraham, because it started with him, and it came all the way down the line to Jesus. And now we celebrate his entrance into the world close to 2,000 years ago. Very amazing. But the point here this morning is, or this afternoon, is to realize that God is not discouraged with the project that each one of us is when it comes to him conforming us to be like the God-man. Romans 8:29, we are predestined. It's already fixed, finished. It's already going to happen. There's no changing God's mind. We are predestined to the conformation, transformation process to be made like the Son of God. This is it. This is going to happen. And it happens in this life. And then when we see him, it will be complete. When we see him, we will be like him. But until then, there's lots of work to be done on all of us. And we see these very encouraging examples from people in the Bible, starting with Jacob, who was given the accurate name of Jacob. Even coming out of the womb, his hand is grabbing the heel of his brother who preceded him in birth. And yet he's trying to hold him back because, in a sense, it's like, I'm first, get back here. It's like Pastor Steve talks about the bushels of crabs in Maryland. Not only Maryland, but it's, I guess crabs don't let other crabs leave the basket. If they're all in there together, there's no cover on it, but as soon as one crab gets near the top, the other crabs pull it back in. So they're just a bunch of Jacobs. That's a good illustration of what it's like. And so after lying to his father, after cheating his brother, Esau is enraged and plans on killing his brother. And his mother, Rebekah, hears about this and warns him that he has to flee and run for his life back to Haran, 550 miles away. And so he does. And he goes, though, with the blessing of his father Isaac. The Abrahamic covenant and all of its parts and components, land, offspring, blessing, God's presence, are all transferred from Abraham to Isaac, and then from Isaac to Jacob. And he leaves with the blessing of his father. But yet he's going to a place he's never been before. And as the sun is setting on one of these evenings fleeing, he comes to a place where he decides he's going to camp out, and he has a stone for a pillow, and he falls asleep, and he is fleeing, really, for his life. His future is uncertain. He has the promises of God, but there had to be a sense of guilt in his heart. There had to be a sense of wrongdoing. There had to be, to some degree, a sense of shame, and this guilt must have been heavy on his heart. And yet he falls asleep and he has a dream. And this is the first appearance of God to him, of seven, actually. God appeared to Jacob 7 times. This cheater, crooked, swindler of a guy, that God appears to him 7 times. In the first dream he has is at this place where the dream is of a ladder, or it could be also a staircase, and it goes from earth up to heaven. And there are these angels there ascending and descending this ladder or staircase. And it says there, it can be interpreted different ways. It says in most versions that God was at the top, but the Hebrew really says that God was standing. That's all it says. God was standing and God said, and he reaffirmed the promises to him. But some say he was standing next to Jacob. But he is amazed at this dream, and he wakes up and he is filled with fright. And this Hebrew word is very strong. He said, God was in this place and I knew it not. And probably in the condition he was in, guilt-ridden, filled with fear from his brother Esau, and also fear because of his wrongdoing, yet he is amazed that God had appeared to him. And you know what is really interesting about this is God does not have a word of rebuke for crooked, cheater Jacob. The only thing that we see here is the presence of God manifested by a whole bunch of angels interacting with him from heaven to earth and back again, God's messengers, who will make sure that the covenant promises would be fulfilled, that he would be protected, and that God would be true to his word. He has all these angels who are involved in his life. And then he is fearful, perhaps thinking that I could have, why am I still alive? How did God allow me to survive this vision that I had? And so, but this is the point. God knows the end from the beginning. We could say, God, we could bring up a whole bunch of other scriptures of what you say about lying and cheating and being crooked, and but yet Jacob has done all these things, and you didn't even mention them. You didn't call him on the carpet, as we say. You didn't indict him. You didn't even mention them. As a matter of fact, all you did was bless him and give him promises. Okay, but that's not the whole story. The story is that Jacob would be fleeing to Uncle Laban. Uncle Laban was really the result of his crookedness, because Uncle Laban was just as crooked Jacob, if not more. Uncle Laban was the guy that you did not want to do business with, because he just had a way, like Jacob, of getting the best of the deal. And so it begins right away when he's going to marry, supposedly he's going to marry Rachel, but don't ask us how. He ended up with Leah because the trickster got tricked. And then he ends up working 7 more years, and he gets the woman that he really wanted to marry in the first place, and that is Rachel. And then there's all this family confusion and squabbling. So now he has 2 wives, and he has actually 4 wives, because he has Zilpah and the other one whose name I just forgot. So he's got these 4 women all wanting to have more children, and the whole thing is such a mess. And that's why bigamy is never a good idea, because how can there be a husband and 2 or more wives and think there's going to be family unity? It just does not happen. In all the cases we see of polygamy in the Bible, it never ends well. And you can look at the kings, you can look at David, you can look at the whole line of kings, whether they be of Judah or Israel, and we see disharmony, jealousy, and strife. So this is his life. He said to Laban, "You changed my wages 10 times." Can you imagine? All right, we'll work this out. I'll give you this much. No, he changes it. Years go by, he changes it again. And no doubt it was never in Jacob's favor. So, what is God doing? God is giving Jacob a taste, as we say, of his own medicine. God is working on Jacob. God didn't have to bring it up at the dream with the ladder or the staircase because God had a plan. In other words, we could say, "Hey Jacob, you're not getting away with anything because God has found you out, and God is going to take those 20 years to take the Jacob out of you." Because on the way back, God appears to him again in the vision of two camps of angels again. Leaving Canaan, he has a vision. 20 years later, he comes back to Canaan. God meets him at the border and gives him another vision of encouragement. But God changed his name. 20 years with Laban was enough to teach him a lesson. 20 years with Laban and all the trouble he went through. Also, of course, his brothers-in-law, there was a lot of problem there, as well as with Laban. And so after 20 years, God was conforming him. He was changing him from Jacob and making him a prince with God, or one who has power with God, one who had authority with God, because his life was more and more aligning to what God was conforming him to be. And so often it takes long series of trials and difficulty and pressure to change our crookedness. And yes, we have a new nature, but to live in that new nature and to allow that new nature to have its way and its effect on us is a process, because we tend so easily to go to the natural, to go the way of the flesh. And God allows trouble to happen so that we will come to the place where we will say, "I don't want the flesh anymore. I want your way." And so this isn't just with Jacob, but we see it throughout the scriptures where God is changing names. That represents a changed nature. Abraham became Abram. Abram became Abraham. Sarai became Sarah. We see Jacob became Israel. And we see other examples in the Bible where Simon became Peter. We could say loose gravel became the granite ledge. This is God did that to him. And then we see that Saul, the great Saul of Tarsus, became Paul, little one. And so we'll just finish by saying, actually, God has a plan to give us all a new name because he's conforming us into his image. And it says in Revelation that those who go the way of God, who are conforming to his image, that he will give hidden secret manna. That is some internal spiritual food that the Spirit of God is giving to them that nobody quite knows what it is that they're getting. But it is unique, and it is good, and it is priceless, and it is wonderful. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him. And so God is able to do this. He is able to give us a secret, something, a secret manna from heaven that we get to enjoy internally, regardless of what's happening externally. God will give this to us, and it is ours to enjoy. and no one else can figure out exactly what it is we have. But God will give that to us. He wants to give it to us. And then he will give us a white stone. And that white stone, it can also be translated as kind of a voice or a vote of approval. That the white stone is really God's vote of approval. And on that stone is a name that nobody knows except the recipient of the white stone, of the approval. So God says to those who overcome, that is the city where Satan's throne was, where there was temptation and resistance, God said, if you overcome and you follow me, you will not believe what I have in store for you. And it's a secret. We talk about secret Santa. Well, how about secret gifts from the Lord on high, who will give us secret food to eat for our spiritual nourishment and our joy, and also a new name that no one knows what it is but the Godhead and the recipient of that name. So that's it. May you be blessed. Amen.